Everyone, how are you doing? So the Nvidia quarterlies are out, and they are not only good, great, fantastic, wonderful, they are face-melting quarterlies. They are unbelievable quarterlies, and they've even said, hey, here's a little bit of a taste of what Q4 is going to be. So essentially bullet points here, and this is a conversation for the whole market right now. Okay, this right now, what we've had happen here, this will generate in revenue back in the market. This will generate guidance, support, strength, encouragement throughout the investor community, from big to small to Wall Street, everything, with what's just taking place, because these weren't just like, oh, okay, these are good quarterlies, okay, this will prop up the market a little bit. No, this was like, oh my God, this is a nuke going off in the market, because this is just defied all odds, really, of like, this is better than what we could have expected. 57.01 billion revenue. It was estimated 55. Okay, the data center was unbelievable. They made 51.2 billion in data. That's a whole conversation right there. Gaming revenue 4.3 billion, and then get this, Q4 is, they're estimating it as of right now anywhere from 63 to 60, almost 67 billion dollars. This is crazy. This is crazy right now. So we're living in this world where the Mag 7 is unbelievably in control, and this is why the United States stock market is just this. It's unreal what we're seeing here. So this is going to go down as one of the biggest years in revenue with, the Mag 7, with what is our Mag 7 right now, and what is going on in our market. The market, obviously, after these Nvidia quarterlies came out here, is, after hours, is starting to pick up. Nvidia stock, as of this moment with me talking here, is trying its hardest to get to $200. I would highly expect that we will see $200 with it, here anytime soon. We've been there. It's not that big of a deal. But the overall market is pushing up. Everybody has probably gotten alerts on their phone, computer, whatever it be, that the market is going up here. So this is fantastic. Obviously, let's talk about Nvidia a little bit more, because I think a lot of people are, wondering what's going to happen from this point on. Where do we go? What does this look like? What does this do to the overall market? Even Big Bear's, moving up along with the market. A lot of things are. What the next steps are is, tomorrow, Thursday, we're going to see payroll reports. We're going to see what those, these are old reports essentially, but we're going to see what they were, what happened. I don't know how the market's going to react to it. It's going to be very interesting, because right now the market's saying, hey, the last big thing we want here is this rate cut in December. Now, obviously, what generates a rate cut? Well, job reports being bad, people losing their job, people need money. So this is something that, I don't know, we'll just see how the market handles this. If they're just like good, bad, not extreme for either side, the market may take this news that we're seeing right here with Nvidia and go like, okay, we're going to push back in. I think a lot of people at this point are becoming very bullish that, okay, Tom Lee may be, the golden goose of, the fortune teller of the market right now, because now we're looking at this fairy tale story where Tom Lee has been saying here for the last 2 months, that he believes that the last 2 weeks in November are going to be very good in the market. Well, we just got the biggest push that we could have gotten. So right now, it's going to be very it's going to be very curious. It's going to be very interesting. I'm stuttering. I'm so excited about this. It's going to be very interesting to see how the market reacts to this news, because the sentiment, obviously here, even coming out of Q3, that was fantastic, where a lot of the Mag 7 just came out with great quarterlies. Bank stocks came out with great quarterlies. I mean, all in all, it was a great Q3 for a lot of our stocks, big stocks, even a lot of low cap stocks, did fairly well, if not just met where they need to meet. Right now with this, you're going to see money be put back in the market. The question is how much new money can be applied to the market right now. Where does Nvidia go from this moment? Do we see Nvidia stock rise to new places we haven't seen before? This brings up the conversation. Does Nvidia move into a higher $200 range here faster than maybe what we think? And two, is tomorrow the baby footprints of S&P 500 climbing back up into this 7,000 point plus range by the end of this year? This is going to be interesting. This is going to be a wild next 2 weeks in the market, especially seeing getting the next thing, like I said, is this rate cut. So let's dig into it. Let's dig into Nvidia here a little bit, and then I'm going to talk about Big Bear too. But like I said, this is an overall conversation for the whole market right now. It is amazing that the market is literally, focusing on one company, but this is just where we're at right now with, us as investors in the market and where history has us. So this is our moment. I think, from this point on, it could be on with the market. And I think that's where a lot of people's focus is right now. So like I said, all in all, revenue, 57 billion in some change there. But I mean, this was fantastic. This is where the conversation of data centers is getting very interesting, because even something like Applied Digital, a company that I have been focusing on since last year, at the beginning of this year, something like Applied Digital was a $4, $5, $7 stock on a good day. Now, I mean, that stock has gone crazy. And with this information, I would expect it's going to continue to do well. Data centers are becoming something that I don't know that I don't think we saw this coming. It snuck up on a lot of people. I think a lot of us were talking about data centers here at the beginning of the year, but no one had any idea that data centers were going to be such a hot commodity just, 10, 11 months later, essentially where we're at right now. With that, I wonder what the next steps are with, I've talked about this mutation of the market, and I think this is kind of what we're seeing here. Obviously, chips are undoubtedly a hot commodity in the market. Jensen has said, hey, we can't make enough of these things. This is where Meta, Amazon, a lot of the Mag 7 here is saying, data centers, network, all this kind of stuff, where they are becoming so wanted, so needed, so expensive, and bringing in so much revenue. But going back to that conversation with Applied Digital, even just using that as an example, because it's a great example, because it's gone to such extreme lengths here, where we've seen Applied Digital go from such they're making pretty good quarterlies to, oh my God, like this company's making insane money right now. With Nvidia here, I know a lot of people are going like, what is the stock share price going to move here to Nvidia? This is something we've never really seen before. This isn't an estimate that we've watched in other companies. This isn't a road that we've seen other companies go down here. This is a learning moment here for a lot of investors, from Wall Street to us. We've never seen a company report these kind of earnings. We've never seen a company report these kind of earnings and go, by the way, hey, the next one, it's going to be even bigger. We haven't seen this. So, if there was a time for a feeding frenzy, a FOMO to set in one stock alone, and probably overall the whole market, and right now, man, this is hard for the bears, because, I think we even, everyone's got that a few friends who have been very bearish on the market, like it's going to crash, you need to get out now. And two, we've seen a lot of big investors take massive profits on Nvidia here the past month, selling out of it, which was scaring a lot of people and bringing more people to this conclusion that, yeah, this is an AI bubble. I'm not so much with that. I'm very much on the bullish conversation when it comes to, I don't really care about this AI bubble conversation right now, because I'm listening to people like Tom Lee, Dan Ives, Jensen here, Elon. I'm listening to these kind of people where they talk about, AI is not going anywhere. This is it. This is the market. We're not looking at AI is going to pop and their AI stocks aren't going to do anything else. this is it. This is our future. This is our market. It just mutates and transforms from this point on. This is why data centers are such an interesting topic right now in the market. With that too, I can go into that conversation about robotics. Robotics are, could be the next huge phase in the market. This is why I keep telling people to pay attention to rich tech robotics. I want to read a little something about what Jensen has said here in essentially what's going on right now, what he released in this Q3 here. Blackwell sales are off the charts. And could GPUs are sold out. They're sold out. Essentially, can't make enough of them. We've heard this is nothing new. Said Jensen, founder and CEO of Nvidia, computer demand keeps escalating and compounding across training and inference. By the way, if you're wondering why it says 2026, they've got some stuff messed up in here with the dates. But this is good here too. Nvidia will pay its next quarterly cash dividend here, and essentially this is really nothing, but the fact that Nvidia is doing a dividend is pretty interesting too. Because people that have been caught up in the last two stock splits, but essentially just the last one here last year, this could do something for you. It's 1 cent. It's not that big of a deal. Per share on demand in December 26 here. So all shareholders recorded from that December 4th. So if you're holding on to Nvidia shares before the 4th, up to the 4th, you will get a dividend stock. A dividend, on top of your how many shares you hold. It's not that big of a deal unless you have like thousands and thousands of shares here. But all in all, it's good. It's interesting. It's something else for bigger investors to look at here. Like I said, going into what is the stock share price, and not that I'm trying to sit on the fence here. And trust me, I'm sitting hard. It's hurting here, but I think there's a broad conversation in the stock share price here with Nvidia that is somewhere in the range of, if this is the proof that the market needs to run and go, okay, we feel comfortable. Investors are like, okay, I feel a lot more comfortable. 190 to 250, I don't think, somewhere in that ballpark in like the next 4 to 6 months, I do not think that is crazy to say whatsoever. I don't even think there's a lot of people that would have pushback on that. We're definitely getting in this conversation of where Nvidia is just going to push into $200 range. Obviously, yes, it's trading in, times what it should. We get that for the person who mathematically is coming at me right now, but this is something, when something is defying all odds and doing something we've never seen in the market, it gets expensive. It gets really expensive. I mean, this is a conversation that, kind of, bleeds off into conversation, talks about Palantir here. Obviously, Palantir is nowhere in the range of doing anything what Nvidia is doing here, but Nvidia itself here, what is the valuation to each and every individual? What are you willing to pay for the most lucrative company in the world right now on the market? What are you willing to pay right now? This is a very interesting conversation, and it's still growing. I think you're going to see people pay $200 and be okay with it. I think you're going to see people pay probably $220, $230 here before you know it, and they're going to feel fine about that. You're going to see ETFs be, and this is another part that's really interesting. ETFs that are holding Nvidia, you're going to see them get more expensive just off this one stock alone. This is why this is very interesting right now. That it's Nvidia stock alone, but it's the overall control in the market and in where Nvidia is attached to. This could really do something as where Nvidia, anything that is attached to Nvidia, personally, business, Jensen, whatever it is, it could do well just from this news going off into the next, push into the market. This is why rich tech, I keep telling people, like, watch rich tech, watch it. Don't take your eyes off rich tech. And Jensen has talked about rich tech many times this year, and something could happen there very soon. This is so amazing. This is just amazing. I am such a nerd with the market right now. I'm just so like, oh my God, like I cannot believe this is what's happened here. So friends, with that, let me know what you think about Nvidia. What is your evaluation? How high will you buy Nvidia? I think it's a really interesting question. I'm probably going to make a post and I'm going to ask, like, what are you willing to pay for Nvidia? That's kind of an interesting question right there. What are people, what is their evaluation of it? What are we looking at next year? At this growth, think about this growth rate. This is essentially $10 billion on top of each quarterly if they actually pull this off from this quarterly to the next quarterly, the last quarterly, this quarterly, and Q4. Is it by summer of next year where Nvidia is reporting 80, 90, $100 billion quarterlies? What are we talking about here? And then I may get hate for this, but then the conversation comes up again. This time next year, do we start talking, maybe the stock has gotten so ridiculous, overvaluated even more at that point, that we start talking about another stock split, maybe at the end of next year, or maybe in 2027. How more ridiculous does this get? It's an interesting conversation. So Big Bear, now that we've seen this happen in the market with Nvidia, obviously I think a lot of us, we're going to have to watch and see what happens here. Will this push into how aggressive will this push in the market? There's no doubt that this is pushing into the market, but is this the jump start getting us back to where we were, a month ago in the market, where we were running high, low cap, mid cap, big cap stocks were doing well, everything was just running here and it was easy to make a buck in the market? Could we be getting back into that kind of, run? Are we about to see a whole new run in the market where the S&P does go back or does push into this 7,000 point range? I think that's very possible. I've been bullish all year. As I am not going to go against the grain of Tom Lee, Dan Ives, a lot of other big investors, analysts in the market. I'm just not. There's no point. It's a little ridiculous to do that. I'm not trying to be different and be like, well, I'm unique. I'm going with the crowd here. Okay. It's done well for me. It's done well for a lot of people. With Big Bear here, I know a lot of people are going to be like, do you think Big Bear can push back up into an $8, $10 range here? I definitely think that's possible. But I am curious to see, obviously, more than likely what we're going to see first off here in the first 24, 48 hours of the market, seeing how it reacts to this. The bigger stocks are going to do more here, from your Nvidia to the Mag 7 to, companies like Oracle, Palantir, a lot of those, especially the bigger tech stocks like that, they're going to push more. They're going to do better because there's a lot more certainty that those stocks, people are day trading, swing trading, in long-term trading. They're going to do more. I would not be shocked whatsoever to see Palantir push back up into a 180, 190 zone here sooner than, we think. Now, looking at something like Big Bear, I do think Big Bear can easily push back up into a high $6 range here. 7, 8 obviously would be fantastic. I am very, and I've made this very clear, but I am, at this point, with everything that's happened this year with Big Bear, I am very long-term with Big Bear. I am still on this marriage journey with Big Bear where I really am excited about 2026 to see what they do. And two, I don't want to go over it too much, but I've talked about, what Kevin just released here, telling people about, hey, big beautiful bill, we expect to see more deals, border control, security, all this kind of stuff, essentially saying we are expecting to have more deals. And hint, we've had conversations with the Defense Department about this, and there's going to be some things coming up. And not to mention, hey, too, they just spent a bunch of money on making themselves an even better company with tech, the $250 million they spent on Sage. With that, this is a real conversation that, Big Bear they've had a good year this year, but they've had a good year in the sense of they've gotten a lot of deals. And like I said, more airline deals. I think that's definitely coming down the pipeline here. But there's been a lot of restructuring, this year. It's been a lot of restructuring the company from top to the bottom to the top here. And this is a moment to where, investors could really do well, not focusing on like, oh my God, I'm bag holding. Oh my God, it's now it's at 5, it's 6, 7, I think if you're willing to put in the time here, this could be a very special stock going into next year. I really do feel that way. There's a lot of evidence pushing there. This is the bottom line with Big Bear right now. There's a lot more positive than there is negative, if that helps. Okay? There's a lot more positive. And you can take that one to court because that's true. There's a lot more positive than there is negative right now with Big Bear. That is the overall conversation. Yes, you can make 2 pages. You can fill a lot of stuff up with negatives, obviously. But you can fill a lot more pages up with a lot of positive here. And that goes with the deals, that goes with the restructuring, that goes with the Q3 that just came out, with everything that would happen with it. There's a lot of positives right now with Big Bear. So let that sit in the back of your mind. I wouldn't sit here and fester over the stock price. Now, if you're swing trading it, you're doing that, yeah, that's going to be that's going to be watching what happens here on a day-to-day basis, seeing what the market can get back up to. But talking about the overall market, yeah, I am obviously there's going to be some stuff coming out tomorrow. We'll see how the market reacts to that. But, if the market likes what it hears tomorrow about this payroll news, man, I mean, market could be rolling here in the next 2 weeks. I mean, this could be one of the best turkey weeks we've had in the market. And 2, the market usually does well in November. So the market could go, okay, we're going to clean up this month, and here we go. Friends, this is why I have been telling people I have been buying the past 2-3 weeks. I have been buying. Now, obviously, I've been buying the bottom on the bottom on the bottom on the bottom. But, look at what's happening now. This is very interesting. Friends, take care of yourself. Let's see what happens with this market tomorrow. This is going to be really interesting. Really interesting. This is crazy. Take care of yourself, friends. Bye, everyone.